All right, here we are in the next section where we're going to start diving into the use of the Pandas library for applications specific to the construction, architecture, and building engineering industry. So let's take a look first at what's called Kaggle dataset. And we'll learn a lot more about Kaggle datasets in upcoming lessons. But this one Kaggle has a whole section of all different kinds of datasets from around the world, from marketing to engineering to advertising to images to you name it. There's something on there, some sort of dataset which represents almost every field that you can think of. In the building industry, it's no different. And some of those datasets are ones that my team and myself have created and uploaded. So this dataset is called a Simple Shopping Mall EnergyPlus Simulation Dataset. And we'll look at a simple dataset to get started and solidify some of the Pandas functions that we've learned so far in this set of lessons. The context of this dataset, it was created by one of the PhD students here at the National University of Singapore, Dr. Miguel Martin. It's an output of data from the EnergyPlus simulation program. And we'll look more into what EnergyPlus is and what it provides. In the dataset, you can see down at the bottom, there's something called a data explorer where you can click on the various files that are contained in this dataset. Most of these are CSV files. And the data that's contained in these files is really simple. There's two columns, a month index, and then a column which includes energy consumption of this particular building that's simulated over the course of a whole year. You can see in a baseline, there's 5 different scenarios that have been simulated. If we go into a tab here called Code, what you'll see is a Kaggle notebook, which we've been using for other lessons, obviously. And this is one that I created. It's not part of any courses in Kaggle. It's something I created. What you can do then is you can copy this into your own Kaggle account. Let me navigate over here so we can dive into what we can learn in this particular notebook. So this notebook is a scenario, it's a fake scenario that Miguel and I created to showcase the value of using Pandas to process data that we would usually otherwise use a spreadsheet. And of course this is a very small data set. It's really simple. We're getting started with something really simple. You could use a spreadsheet to analyze this data set, which I think is important because those of you that are, of course, everyone uses spreadsheets. So those of you that use spreadsheets, you can see very clearly the differences using a very simple data set. This data set is a simulation of a shopping mall in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. We're going to be using Pandas, of course. There is something I want to bring up here, which is the Pandas data wrangling cheat sheet, which is found from PyData, the nonprofit organization that maintains Pandas. And it has all kinds of, it's a cheat sheet to all the different functions and things that we have covered so far in previous lessons and what we'll cover again today. Let's dive into this case study. So you can see that this is an actual shopping mall in UAE. Here are some specifics of it. It's quite large, over 500,000 square meters. It's projected when it was under design to have visitors of over 90 million people per year. And it's in a climate which is really hot, which needs a high cooling demand. So there is a whole process in the design phase of buildings where there's models and various data representations such as building information modeling, etc., that's converted into an EnergyPlus model that is created to make predictions. We'll look at the very simple example of cooling energy analysis. Each of these files is very simple. It has one column, which is the months of the year that's being simulated, and the other column is in gigawatt hours of cooling energy. The first thing we need to do, of course, is import our Pandas library. As we learned before, there are lots of different ways to load data from data sources or files. And we looked specifically at the read_CSV function, but here you can see this is a screenshot from the documentation of Pandas that shows it's not just CSV. There's a whole list of different data sources. The most common ones that I use are read CSV, read Excel. Some of these other data formats you probably never heard of, like HDF. Python pickle format is quite common. SQL, of course. Usually I just use flat files like CSVs and Excel files. In Kaggle, of course, the best and easiest way is to just load from this data set. If we come over here to the right-hand side and we expand this side menu, you'll notice that there are different sections here. And the first one at the top is all about the data. And so since this code notebook is within the data set that I mentioned, it already has the data set sitting here ready for us to use. we can actually see all these files that we looked at before. You also see a link. This is the file path link to access this data within Kaggle's database. So we can copy that. We can paste it, which we've already done here, paste it into this point right here, and we load this data set similar to what we've been doing so far. So here you can see this data frame very quickly, the months January through December, and the baseline cooling energy consumption of a simulation model of this large shopping mall. And this is in gigawatt hours of cooling energy per month. So it seems like a small number, but it's actually a huge amount of cooling. Here's this quick section. I want to cover a concept that happens in these type of notebook formats like Kaggle and Colab and Jupyter, which is called autocomplete. This is very common when you're coding. Even veteran programmers will use autocomplete sometimes to help them code. So far in the course, and except for the exercises, you haven't been writing a lot of code. You've been following along and seeing how we do things. But it is very important for you to learn how to, obviously, to actually code itself. Autocomplete's really useful, and here you can see a screenshot. This is actually from Colab, but it's very similar to the way Kaggle works. If you do pd dot read and then hit tab, what happens is you see a pop-up here, and this tab is allowing you to see all the options of read underscore whatever in the Pandas library. This is like a library directory in a sense of what you're looking for. So we'll click read CSV. You can make a parentheses. You can click on your keyboard, you can press tab again when you have the parentheses. And what it does is it gives you a whole list of the different attributes that you can specify in this particular function. And you can see there's lots of them. We don't use all of these. The ones that we use the most, I'll show here in a second. So I'm not going to execute this. I'll just comment this out here because we don't need to run that. Changing the way that this data set is loaded. So we saw this before, but we'll look at it with this data set as well. We want the month column to be the index. And to do that, we're going to use an attribute called index underscore column. So here you can see that's the same call of that function, but we're going to add index underscore column equals month. Let's run this baseline data again, see what we get here. We can see that we have the month axis is now the index of this data frame, and the baseline energy consumption is the first column besides the index. So we'll quit the video now. We'll start the next video where we'll look at ways to select different data within the data frame that we just created.